Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the second edition of Live with D25. I'm your host, as always, Adam Harris. I'm the head of communications and storytelling for District 25. And today, my guest is Dr. Lori Bine, our superintendent, and she will be our guest for the coming weeks. You can see the schedule for Live with D25 on our calendar on our website. Hi, Dr. Bine. Thanks for jumping on.
Hi, Adam. Hi, everybody.
So let's just go over what Live with D25 is. We did one session last week on Thursday. It was an evening session and recorded it and put it on our website. This is an opportunity, another opportunity for us to connect with the public in an open door, open forum kind of way. Just wanting to get information out there so you can hear it from us directly and then answer any questions that anyone attending may have. Right now, and usually the format with it will be, we jump on, we kind of update on some things that have been happening in the last week or last couple of weeks, eventually when we spread these out a little bit, and then take some questions. And we thought today, there's not a lot of people on right now, so we kind of thought we would open it to questions right now, if there are any questions or directions that people wanted us to go right now, understanding that you may have to jump off and you may want your questions answered first. So if anybody is on right now, wants to throw a question in the chat, go right ahead and we can tackle that. Other than that, and until we wait for the questions to kind of jump up, Dr. Bine, where do you want to start today? I was thinking we would just kind of start with just updating where we're at. And again, we're moving to the 5-day in-person model with 5-day remote as an option starting next Monday.
Sure. And related to that, I believe we got one question from someone who couldn't jump on but wanted to watch the recording. So I'll talk about that a little bit at first.
Okay, great.
The question related to, as we move into next school year, will we be using our Chromebooks, our iPads, as much as we are this year? And I will say that we're going to continue our one-to-one device initiative. So we're going to continue with students having their own device, but we'll go back to a more of a typical use amount. So as we move into the 21-22 school year, you will not see students on their devices at all to the level that they are during this year, as our students interact with their the classmates that are online while they're in person. So we'll definitely see a decrease in the amount of time students are on their devices for school things during the school day next year, but we'll use them to some level as we have in previous years. There are some great engagement tools that teachers will use during the class time, some group work that they'll do together through things like Google or Google Working Sheets, and some other, again, software and programs that they use for assessment. But again, we'll return to a more of a normal level use next year. But there's also some things, right, our teachers and students have learned this year by being kind of forced into this use. And I imagine we'll take what has worked and what's been good and add it to our previous experience to make our new normal. But overall, we'll see a dramatic decrease in the use of technology while kids are in class, pretty similar to the dramatic increase we saw this year due to the pandemic. And then more in general, Adam, like you talked about, we're moving to this step 4.5, we've called it. As we mentioned last time, just like the state has added a bridging piece to their phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we've added a half step. And so effective next week, so Monday the 26th, I believe, is the date that we start with 5 full days in person for those who are choosing it, and 5 full days remote for those who continue to choose that. With the structure being the same in terms of our remote students live streaming in so they can interact with their classmates through the rest of the year. And that last day for students is Friday, June 11th. So That should be kind of the final half step for this year. I say final a little hesitantly just because nothing is known for sure during this pandemic, but
Right.
unless we have some major surprise in the trend of the pandemic and its impact on our students and families and staff, that will be our 4.5 will be our last phase this year. Even as if the state is able to move to phase 5, so in the state of Illinois, phase 5 is basically everything's back to normal. That vaccines are widely available, that there's no increase in COVID-19 cases. So even if the state goes to phase 5, for the rest of this school year, we will continue to offer that remote option for families that are choosing that. We won't stop that option just because the state moves to phase 5. So as we move into, again, April 26th, those two options, full in-person or full remote, will continue through the rest of this school year. But next year, as you started asking about next year as well, we still have a few things to determine. We're waiting to see if the State Board of Education, along with the Department of Public Health, requires a remote option for next year. Technically, at this point, what the State Board of Education requires is a remote option for students who are at elevated health risk or who have family members who are elevated health risk. And so that might continue into the new school year, that we need to provide a remote option for those students. Or it may be that the State Board of Education says remote learning is an option school districts can offer in the new school year. So we're waiting for that. We've been told we'll have that information this month, but I know the State Board of Education is working as hard as it can, and we may not see it this month. So depending on that guidance, we'll have to go into our decision-making about next year. If we have a remote option, it would be separate from our in-person learning like we're doing this year. Some school districts have had what people are calling kind of a remote academy. And some have had kids live streaming in like we do. We would move next year to that more remote academy scenario. Interestingly, superintendents meet every week and have since mid-February last year when we started hearing about COVID-19. And some of our districts that have had a remote academy next year are going to change and have a live stream in option. So I don't know that there's any district that feels exactly what they've done has been perfect and they're going to continue with it. But everybody's making some adjustments. So otherwise for next year at this point, and unless we have some major change, we'll go back to a more typical school year. From day one, 5 days in person, full days. We will reopen all extracurriculars. We will likely be using our locker rooms at the middle school. We'll continue with the mitigation strategies that are helpful, such as wearing masks, distancing to the greatest extent possible, washing our hands. And again, we'll continue to follow what the Centers for Disease Control and the Illinois Department of Public Health shares our appropriate mitigation strategies at that time.
Okay, great. So ton of information there. Thank you for all that. I have some notes to possibly follow up with you on.
Great.
So, okay. When you just listed those details of what next year will look like, the thought I had was like, that's the intent, right? That's our intent as of right now. And then obviously the disclaimer of who knows what happens with the pandemic or with like government regulations or with any recommendations coming down from Illinois State Board of Education or whatever. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm the word intent kept coming up, where like, this is the intent and proposal of what we would be doing. And obviously if something changes, as soon as we would know that, we would communicate that out.
Yeah, thanks. And I would even say that's the plan, not
Okay.
even just the intent, but that is the plan. But yeah, one thing that we've learned in this last year is things change. And so our plan is to move forward with a much more typical school year. But should we get information from the health department or from the State Board of Education that we need to consider, and that causes us to change our plan, we would communicate that as soon as we have it. There's no information out there at this point that I'm thinking of, but yeah, just kind of that disclaimer of, should something new come out that we need to follow, we would adjust and share that with everyone.
Yeah, one of the big things that you said that came up for me was the extracurriculars and like sports and things like that. So that would be the plan, to move full go with those starting in the fall.
Yeah, and we've gone kind of full go with that at our middle schools already. But with the mitigation strategies that are required by the Illinois Education of School Association, the like IHSA, the elementary level, or the IDPH. So we have some basketball teams going, we have some track and field going, we've had some volleyball going at our middle schools.
Right.
We've had several clubs meeting in different capacities, but I think we would continue that and grow on that as we move into the next school year.
Okay, that's great. With the possibility of remote academy next year, you mentioned we might get recommendations from ISBE that is like, you need to have one, or it's an option for school districts to have one. Can you take me through where your head's at, or where our head's at with each one of those from Illinois State Board of Education, if we're recommended or required, or do we not know at this point what we would do?
Right. So at this moment, we're required. So last summer, it was a recommendation that school districts could have one. But before the school year started, it switched to a school districts must offer remote. So that's a kind of a mandate, a requirement. About a few weeks ago, maybe up to a month ago, we got updated guidance that said school districts must now hold a remote option for students who are at that elevated health risk. So not just for anybody who chooses, but for those who are at an elevated health risk or who live with someone who's at an elevated health risk.
Sure.
Because we had already started remote for anybody who chose that, we're continuing that in District 25 through the end of this school year. So as you know, we recently had another selection opportunity where people could choose to come in person or choose to go remote. And we're continuing that selection that they made through June 11th. So even though the requirement's only for a selection of students, we're allowing families to continue that choice for the rest of this year.
Great.
So at this point, that's the latest guidance that we have. So that would carry over to the new year. If nothing changes, we will be required to have a remote option for students who are at elevated health risk or who live with families that are elevated health risk.
Gotcha.
And so if that continues into the new year, we would offer a remote academy type option for those students who qualify under that designation. And we would no longer plan to offer a remote option for anyone, but only for those students at elevated health risk or who live with family members who are at elevated health risk. We are hearing through our superintendents, professional organizations, we have colleagues who represent us at the state board level, and we're hearing that we may be receiving guidance that makes remote learning only an option for school districts to provide and not a requirement. And so if that is true, at this moment, I would say that District 25 would not be offering a remote option. if we're not required to do so.
Okay.
A lot of conversations still in the works about that. A lot of superintendents in the area talking about how we might be able to kind of join forces and possibly have something that people from throughout different districts could join if they chose remote instead. And again, it's just like this year has been fluid. I think at this point, we're still in a bit of a fluid state in terms of, finalizing, will there be a remote option for next year? All I can tell you for sure is that if there is a remote option, it would be separated from in-person learning in District 25.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is if it stays as is, remote academy will be in place next year for students with an elevated or a higher health risk, or people at home that have an elevated or higher health risk. And if it's not a mandate from the state to have remote academy, the intention right now, or the thought, would be to not have a specific remote academy for students, but maybe options based on partnerships with other districts, or just like there is that option still hanging in our head to be like, we would still think about having some sort of remote option.
Yeah, I'd say that we're always having conversations about it,
Yeah.
right? We're always looking at what could be possible.
Yeah.
But probably the short answer is if a remote learning is not required by the state of Illinois next year, I'll be advocating in District 25 that all of our students come back in person.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that clarification. I also wanted to bring us all the way back to the tech question. What kept coming up for me was like how, and I don't want to put words in our tech department's mouths, but since I've experienced them and how they like navigate tech and education, it's always been from a very mindful, non-reactive type place. And I think like, I love that question that was sent in, which was just kind of like, are we going to keep putting screens in front of our kids' faces? And our tech department loves how tech can be a supplement to education and move it forward. And like the goal of the tech department has never been to like grab the latest trend, throw it in front of our kids. And I just always respected that. And I've always just thought that that was like a really cool aspect to the way we mindfully bring tech into the classroom. And I just see that like happening next year as well.
Yeah, they definitely have always said, well, let's talk about the instructional purpose first,
Yeah.
right? What is the instruction and the impact and the experience we're wanting kids to have? And then how can tech support that or enhance that? And so it's always that instructional piece first, and then tech second. It's like you said, it's never been a, hey, let's get as many tech devices as we can. There's always been a reason that adding technology or the type of technology chosen or the reason to use technology, there's always been an instructional purpose first. And that's the way it should be, right? It should always be, what's the learning experience that we want our kids to have, or how can we enhance it? And then does technology play a role in that?
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so it's been about 20 minutes of live with D25. Again, like welcome anybody that's jumping in or listening to this as the recording. I'm Adam Harris. Dr. Bine, our superintendent, has been awesome to join us here and will join us for the coming weeks. I will just say next week's, let me just double check. Next week's live with D25 is a Friday afternoon at 2:00. And that link will be posted on our website on the calendar, and it'll also be tweeted out and thrown out on Facebook to join as well. If you have any questions that you want us to answer but can't attend the live with D25 appointment, you can email them to me, aharris@sd25.org, aharris@sd25.org. Anybody attending right now, this would be a great time to throw questions in the chat. We've also kind of looked at this as like Dr. Bine has open door once a month on Tuesday afternoons where people can pop in or make appointments, and she is in her office ready to meet with anybody that wants to in person, face to face. This is kind of like a virtual open door as well. So something that, if we're not going to have content to fill an hour every single time, and eventually this might not be an hour, right? But I'm thinking right now, I don't know, do you have anything else that you kind of want to communicate out proactively to the community? Is there anything, I feel like we've updated them on a good amount right now. I don't know, is there anything else that's in your mind right now?
I think just one thing, Adam, related to this transitional model of reopening and COVID-19 and all of that. I mentioned that superintendents meet every week so that we can share information with each other, so that we can see what everybody's working on for next year, et cetera. Another thing that happens at least once a week is a update from the Illinois Department of Public Health for schools, a live webinar that they do, both for their local health departments by county and for superintendents, and sometimes our lead school nurses attend those. And so they're always helpful as they're continuing as a state health department to learn and continuing to adjust their guidance. And some of a couple of topics that came up this week that are things that I've heard from parents from here to there. A couple topics they really focused on related to quarantining and isolation and close contacts. And in fact, they made a real effort to say, hey, everybody, listen here, this is important. We need to make sure we're clear. And what they shared was that, quarantining and isolation is really effective at protecting the public. And that 14-day quarantine, if you're a close contact, continues to be preferred by the health department. And they stated that while we all have heard about the 7 and 10-day shorter quarantines, they have never recommended less than 14 for schools that are in person. And they continue to recommend 14-day quarantine for students who are close contacts to positive or probable cases. I reached out based on that to about 12 of the districts in the area just to make sure, are they still using 14? Because that is what we've been told every time we call our local health department. And 10 of those have said, yes, they're still using 14. Sometimes the 2 others, one is still getting back to me. One got some different information from a local health department, and sometimes that happens. We call the Cook County Health Department every time we have a case and talk to different people that are assigned to work with school districts. And sometimes somebody might get some different information based on their situation. But every time that we've checked, and again, they really focused on it this week, that 14-day quarantine for students is still what is expected by the health department. And the other part of that is there's been some questions I know I've heard about what is a close contact, right? Because recently, excuse me, the state board changed the guidance that students, instead of having to be 6 feet apart, could be 3 feet apart to open schools. And a lot of schools that didn't have in-person learning yet, or were only in hybrid, moved to full in-person learning once that guidance of they could be 3 feet apart got put in place. The clarification, and I know we've talked about it at school board meetings here, but since I have this opportunity in this forum as well, the clarification is that if someone is a close contact, if they are within 6 feet. So even though you can have 3 feet distance to open a classroom, close contact definitions have not changed. Someone is still a close contact if they are within 6 feet of anyone who is positive or probable. So, and we talked about that again in a board meeting, that as we move to having more people in person, it only makes logical sense. We'll have more close contacts when we do have a case. And so, they just, again, happen to really focus on that again this week, that if someone is within 6 feet of a positive or probable case, they will be considered a close contact and then need to do that 14-day quarantine if they're a student in a school.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome reminders. Thank you. So yeah, I mean, it's amazing how well versed you and then all of us are on this type of content. Where like 1 year ago, a year and a half ago, we weren't discussing any of this stuff. And you were able to just kind of just say all that, like just from watching one webinar based on, I don't know, it's just amazing. Like, I'm glad you were able to like attend that webinar and stay as like just educated on this as possible, because it's something that constantly changes.
Yeah, it's something our whole community, right? All of us as parents and as teachers and as workers, we've all never could have imagined, but we've all had to learn a lot about it. But definitely it is a daily part of my work experience now, and important for me and principals and other educational leaders to stay on top of it. We've really had a great relationship with the health department, keeping us updated, making sure that we understand I'm not a medical professional. Our school nurses have been amazing leaders in this area this year in not only caring for all of us, but keeping us educated. But again, I'm not a medical professional, but the health department is really connected with superintendents to make sure that we have all the information and all the understanding that we need. And again, just like everybody in the community gets updates, we get those at least once a week and often more frequently than that.
Yeah. Okay. I know a lot about I know the difference between quarantine and isolation now,
Yeah.
But yeah, our nursing team has made sure I knew that, and like obviously they're so passionate about this type of stuff, and it comes across in the way that they get the information and get it to us as well. So they've been like such a rock for me to lean on too, whenever I've been like had a question about that and how to communicate that out.
Yeah, they have, they've always been an amazing part of schools and caring for kids and caring for staff. And, but their level of medical expertise has really been something that got a spotlight shined on it this year for me, and how much, like you said, they're passionate. If you say, hey, I'm sorry to ask you, but could you help with, they're like, yes, this is what we do. This is what we care about. We're so excited to be able to step forward in this time of need. So they've been amazing. And then, but yeah, as well, their level of medical knowledge and understanding is far greater than I think any of us had ever stopped to realize.
Yeah. Stop to realize. I actually just interviewed a kiddo today. I'll post the interview next week. And I was like, what did you learn from this COVID-19 pandemic so far? What are your reflections? And she just mentioned like the doctors and nurses. And she's like, I never once went a day going, wow, I'm so glad that there are doctors and nurses in the world, and now she's like, we talk about them every day. I think about them every single day. Now we stop and realize the actual impact and importance of those people that have chosen to work in healthcare and in hospitals in general. And so I just thought that was a really cool reflection that this kiddo had.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody we consider a first responder or medical field personnel, it's almost hard to believe how helpful they've been, how knowledgeable they are. And kind of what you said about that student that made me think is, I hope when we all get through this, that we all realize how important all of us are, every single one of us, right? How everybody is doing the very best they can. Everybody is dealing with a difficult experience. I mean, I thought pandemics only happened in movies, right? Or long ago in history. So parents, like I think about how different my role is as a parent this year than it ever has been before. I have older kids, and I think about parents that have very little ones, and oh my goodness, how difficult and different their role is than they ever could have imagined. Teachers, I am wowed by them. I am in awe of them, that they're not doing the minimum they need to do. They're looking for ways to do more, to have more impact, to make things greater. And they're absolutely incredible to me every day as we go through this, and our students, right? We talk about resilience but we also talk about their own mental health and how we can support them. And that's going to be a long journey for all of us to keep supporting them.
Right.
But as I know I saw one interview you did with an elementary student, I'm thinking, and I was just like, oh my God, that kid just made my day. He just said things that are so profound and yet so basic, right? As our kids can be, just basic and right
It's
on.
simple.
Simple.
It's simply said, but it's impactfully said.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't know, like that like made my week. And I'm glad you saw that. And anybody can go to our Facebook page or our Twitter feed and find that video of Emerson. Emerson was he's an enlightened little dude. And I was really excited that he was so articulate and able to share his thoughts with us so easily.
Yeah, and let's listen to our kids, right? Let's listen to the minds of those that just go right to the simple and good thing to do.
Yeah, it's like I asked this girl this morning and I was like, do you have anything else you want to say? That's my favorite question to ask them. Do you have anything else you want to say? Because they always say yes. And at the end, she was just like, I don't know. I just think like we can all just be really good people. And I was like, yes,
That's
that's
it,
it.
right? Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's been exciting that I'm able to start getting out there and grabbing those stories again. It feels a little more normal, which is great. But yeah, like Dr. Vine, like thanks for your time. Do you have anything else that you want to say?
No, I think there's always a lot, but we have some future opportunities. And so I know one of the things I want to talk about in the future is more about the strategic plan and the next steps that are happening and how it will, I think a board member said, become a part of our DNA in District 25. But that's a good conversation on its own. So we'll save that for one of the next times.
Great. Okay. And so again, I was touching on this earlier. This is like an open door format. So right now I'm going to invite Dr. Vine to turn her video off and, go on mute and continue working. And I may do the same thing, but I'm here for anybody that has any questions, and Dr. Vine's right across the hall from me and we can get those questions answered. I'll hold some space for the next 28 minutes and then I'll sign off. Okay. All right. Thanks, Dr. Vine. And so now it's just me and live with D25 talking to myself. You know what? I actually think this might be a good opportunity to kind of show off our website a little bit, just so that people can navigate easier. I want to make sure that people are able to navigate our website. Okay. So, now a lot of the content on here, like we've just adopted our new strategic plan, our new slogan. So logos and things are going to change, but spots are pretty much going to stay the same. As this is our homepage, any like major announcement will be up here. And so right now it's just an update on what we're doing in the COVID world, and you can click here for any of those updates. I've tried to eliminate drop downs on our website, just giving people one place to go so that it's not overwhelming right when they get to our homepage. So if you want to know things about our strategic plan, anything like general about our district, you'd click there. Anything COVID-19, you'd click there. Anything school board, you'd click there. Departments like Department of Student Learning, that's a big one for people, anything there. And then if you want to like catch up on any communications or connect with us under the families drop down, you can click there as well. Just taking you into the COVID-19 hub. Any of Dr. Vine's letters are linked right there. Our return to school plans and the transitional model reopening, they're all right here and they're all tabbed. So that's the 4.5 plan for step 3. Our live with D25. This is where you can access what you're watching right now on a recording. And these are the calendar for when you can log in and check out any future live with D25s. The district dish, this is all under the Connect with Us tab under families. And then again, you're like, oh, where am I? Just, hey, if you want to head back to the COVID-19 hub, our transitional metrics, and these are updated daily by me. Sometimes these metrics aren't updated by the source that I'm looking for at the time that I'm available to do it. So I may be behind by like 1 day, and I apologize for that. This is the self-screener information, and also our COVID dashboard, where you can find our weekly updated COVID numbers from the beginning of the school year all the way till now, and any trend graphs that you wanted to see about our COVID numbers. Food services. This is a good spot too. Our COVID stuff for food services, our weekly meal distribution, they're up to 837,000 meals. And sorry, hang on. Yeah, so there's that. And then also menus and labels for in-person food, in-person lunches and distribution. So labels and changes are right there. So sometimes they are getting updated and changes as supply comes in differently for our food services department. And under school board, this is where you can find out what it's like to attend a meeting, contact our Board of Education, which is this board feedback email, meeting dates, members in training. These are our members or school board members. And yeah, we have to update that with a new picture of our new member when this new member gets officially voted onto the board, or officially put onto the board, not voted onto the board, put onto the board. Let's see, any presentations and comments and things like that from any of the board meetings are right here. Our Board Buzz archives are right here. So yeah, anything you want Board of Education, our meeting recordings are under school board. So I don't know, thought that was a really good opportunity to kind of just share all that. Yeah, and I will just hold some space for the next 24 minutes for anybody that has any questions. Throw them in the chat and I'll check in and I'll see if anybody jumps on. Other than that, I hope everyone has a really nice day. Okay, everyone. That has been Live with D25. Thank you for everyone that jumped on and watched us earlier. Again, if you have any questions for future Live with D25s, you want any topics tackled, email me, aharris@sc25.org. That's aharris@sc25.org. Thank you again to Dr. Vine for jumping on and kicking Live with D25 off today for about 30 minutes. And yeah, that's about it. So thank you again. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and we'll see you guys next week on Friday at 2 o'clock. All right, bye.